must be getting nostalgic because this is like the 10th video I've done that's actually an update to a previous video. And this is a fun one. So way back in 2016, I made a video about the Bust of Nefertiti. I know, not my usual subject matter, but in this case, there was a really interesting technological and skeptical angle. I'll summarize it because I would never ask you to watch 2 entire YouTube videos in a row just to get the gist. The 3,000-ish year old bust of Nefertiti was first discovered in Egypt by German archaeologists in the early 20th century. Ever since then, Germany has kept the bust in their own museum, the Egyptian Museum of Berlin. Egypt would very much like to have this piece of art back, but Germany hilariously considers it part of their own cultural heritage. I mean, Hitler really loved it, so I guess? The Egyptian Museum of Berlin created a high-resolution, detailed 3D scan of the bust, but they refused to release it to the general public under any circumstances. I suppose that maybe they were worried that no one would want to go look at a great historic work of art in person when they can just print one up out of cheap plastic using their janky-ass low-res MakerBot at home. I mean, sure, that makes sense. I was gonna go to the Louvre, but then I realized I can just use my LaserJet printer to pop out a Mona Lisa in 20 seconds. Bunch of idiots. In 2016, 2 artists, Nora Albadri and Jan Nicolai Nels, said that they had made their own scan of the bust by hacking a Kinect and putting it in a backpack that they then wore into the museum. They then gave that equipment to a mysterious third party who they say converted that data, made a scan, which they then released to the world, sparking a greater conversation about art, freedom of information, and colonialism. But there's a bit of a twist. Experts who examined their scan pointed out that it would be nearly impossible, let's just say impossible, to get that level of detail using a hacked Kinect. Cosmo Wenman is a 3D printing expert who noticed this and suggested that perhaps the artists were just being used by that mysterious third party to release the official museum scan without being busted for stealing it. Wenman has spent the past 3 years since then on a mission to get the Egyptian Museum of Berlin to release their scan, which catches us up to today's video. Whew, what a journey. But there's so much more. So here's the big news. Wenman did in fact succeed. The museum finally gave him, after a long fight, the 3D scan of the bust of Nefertiti, which Wenman has now released to the general public for free. You can download it over on Thingiverse and do whatever you want with it. Print yourself a teeny Nefertiti. Turn it into a puppet. Nefertiti soap on a rope? Nefertiti vase, whatever you want. Go for it. It wasn't an easy fight for Wenman. He has been arguing with them this entire time, with the museum admitting that legally, yes, he had the right to get that data from them, but they claimed that they couldn't give it to him because it would negatively impact sales of Nefertiti merchandise in their gift shop, the profits from which they implied would go to further digital scanning of their collection. After Wenman refused to back down, the museum eventually caved and they sent him the data, but they added a copyright claim onto the bottom of it, which, I mean, that's rich, considering that Germany stole this artwork from Egypt in the first place, so I'm pretty sure the original artist did not give them the copyright. I honestly keep thinking about this aspect of the entire thing, and I'm just blown away by what a bunch of assholes they are. It would be like, imagine if I recorded Lizzo's Juice off of the radio, and then I put that recording online, but I added a copyright notice to the file that said it was mine. What the actual fuck? Wenman wrote up his adventure over on Reason, and I highly recommend you check it out. And maybe start following him on Twitter because he's really only just getting started. He's going on to fight other museums to release their scans. And he's currently in the midst of a huge fight with the Rodin Museum in France. as a state museum, much like Berlin's, they are required to release their scans to the public. So he's about to take them to court to make sure they do that, which they probably won't. So grab your popcorn. All of this is vitally important work for freedom of information and the celebration of the arts in society. And I'm so glad that Wenman is fighting this fight. But I have to say, after this update, I was left wondering, what about the hacked Connect? Was that scan of Nefertiti actually the official museum scan that someone stole and tried to cover up? So now that we have the official scan, I asked Wenman if he could look at it and compare it to the hacked version and give me his expert opinion. And here's what he had to say. Like most 3D models, the surfaces of both the hack scan and the museum scan are each defined by a mesh that is made of lots of triangles. The hack scan has 2 million triangles. The museum scan has 6.4 million, more than 3 times as many. The two scan surfaces are nearly identical, except the extra triangles in the museum scan define features at a finer resolution than the hack scan. Also, the hack scan has no color data, but the museum scan has full color info. Wenman points out that the hacked scan is about 2% smaller than the real one, which would suggest that the data comes from a different scan. But he says that there are very tiny quirks in how the museum scan was triangulated that are also present in the hack scan. They're artifacts of how the digital model was constructed and not details in the original sculpture. To me, that is pretty conclusive that the hack scan is derived from the museum scan. Boom! Wenman points out that if someone did steal the original scan but wanted to make it look like it was actually a lower quality scan, they could ditch the color data, lower the resolution, and then shrink it a little to maybe look like it came from a replica or that it was somehow different than the original scan. It's not a slam dunk, but it is pretty convincing. Unfortunately, we'll probably never know for sure because the museum continues to be cagey by not releasing absolutely all of the data they have, and the artists and the hacker are remaining tight-lipped about their big heist. For those who want more info, please check out Wenman's article and all of the released data that he has managed to round up. Big thanks to Cosmo for pursuing this and for helping to satisfy 3 years of my personal intense curiosity.